Okay, good evening, everyone. We'd like to welcome you to the, hold on, I don't know what's the date.
May 10th.
Sorry, excuse me. May 10th Preservation Commission meeting. So I would like to call to order. We have a quorum of 7 commissioners, and I believe, Cade, if you want to do the roll call for the commissioners present.
Commissioner Bodan. Commissioner Cohen is present.
Here.
Commissioner Klein.
Here.
Commissioner Morris. Absent. Commissioner Reinhold.
Here.
Commissioner Simon.
Here.
Commissioner Sullivan. She's absent. Commissioner Jacobs.
Here.
Commissioner Dreller.
Here.
Thank you.
Okay, so 7:02, Carlos, we call to order. 7 commissioners present. So I'm just going to briefly go through the process for tonight's meeting so that we're all familiar. We have 4 cases tonight, so somewhat of a reasonable agenda. And I just want to make sure that anyone who would like to have public comment has either signed in into the form that was at the door, outside the doors, or there is another form that's at the podium that you're welcome to sign into when you stand up to give your public comment. What we will do is staff will read the case into record, and then we will go ahead and ask the applicant or the presenter to step up to the podium. They will present their submission. They can use, there's a laser pointer and a remote so that you can control your presentation. And if you need assistance with that, Cade will obviously help you with it. They'll go ahead and present their case, and then the commissioners will ask questions. Once the commissioners have received all the responses to their questions, we will go ahead and ask the applicant to sit back down, and then we will ask for public comment. So we ask that anyone that steps up for public comment, we keep the comments to 3 minutes. And also we ask that you keep the comments strictly to the standards of the Preservation Commission, so that we're not speaking about things that are obviously outside of our purview. Once we have taken public comment, we'll ask the applicants to step back up to the podium, and they can provide any responses to what has been stated. And then we will summarize all of the evidence, and then the commissioners will discuss the case and have a roll call vote. So with that, I would like to have Cade read the first record, or the first case into record, please.
1018 Greenwood Street, Ridge Historic District, case number 22 PRES 0032. David Salzman, owner, submits for a certificate of appropriateness to construct a second-story addition atop an existing single-story rear addition, construct a single-story attached garage with rooftop deck, and alter the structure's front elevation portico. The applicant has requested this be continued to the next meeting, which is June 14th.
So can I ask one of the commissioners to please make a motion to continue the record?
I'll make a motion to continue 1018 Greenwood until June 14.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second is Sarah. All in favor, if you could signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. That's 7. Any opposed? No. So 7, the motion carries 7-0. Okay. Cade, if you can read the next case, please.
2330 Orrington Avenue in the Northeast Historic District, 22 PRES 0051. Michael Hauser, architect, submits for a certificate of appropriateness to demolish a rear volume wooden stoop, alter the fenestration on a single-story circa 1990s rear addition, and construct a single-story bay addition at the principal structure's rear volume. Applicable standards, alteration 1 through 10, construction 1 through 8, and 10 through 15. Michael, whenever you're ready.
Thank you. My name is Mike Hauser. I'm the architect for 2330 Warrington, and the family that lives there. It's when we get to the floor plan, the challenge here is probably typical of what you've heard in the past from others. This is a entry sequence that's not working for a family, and the modern stuff that they have coming in from the outside. You can see seeing the, having a little trouble with the laser.
It's the star on the top.
Oh, the star, okay.
Can you see the green point?
Well, it's green.
Yeah.
Are you seeing it? I'm not seeing, oh, there. So I can see it on the black above, but it's not showing too well. Anyway, you can see the stair in the back. Yeah, right in that area. That's the open deck. And immediately to its left is the mudroom and entry sequence, which is how the family enters the home most of the time. The garage is up on the screen, and that's how they come and go from the house. The challenge here, was to make better use of the existing space, including the closet that's off of the actual stairs, and reconceive of the deck, which is not really big enough for anything that they do out there. So we have the plan on the right-hand side, which the main strategy is to raise the entry landing about two risers, and add a bay onto it would be the west side, which is up on the page. This is a bay that will enclose, coats and sports equipment, shoes, the typical stuff. And rather than a deck, we would have a patio at grade with stairs leading down to the walkway, and then to the right, which is where there's a seating area and an eating area. All this works with what the new plan is for the kitchen, which is to open it to the family room on the left, and just let the whole space breathe more easily. We're utilizing the window type that's in the family room on the left-hand side. It's a double casement in the new area. Well, in the area that is the abandoned door and window off the deck. So, so the cooks and the people inside can have that connection with the people on the patio. Beyond that, we're following a lot of the, if we go to the exterior elevations, you can see we've got a lot to draw from here. There's brick on the base. It's a stucco and half timbering up above. Lots of roof activity. What we're doing is the bay on the bottom, you can see, replaces the door. The door then moves to the left-hand side of that. And the bay is adorned with some of the typical stucco motifs that you see around the house. There's this kind of overlapping oval that is present on the upper part. We thought it would be nice to pull it down and make it kind of the hood ornament on the back of the house. So you can see in that on the left-hand side, that's the door with the transom above, gets us to that entry patio, and then down onto grade. Thank you. That's what we look like from the back. That window type, that's the double casement. Now we're using a triple on the kitchen side. And that's really, now it's one whole space, so we want those windows to read similarly. We're using a metal roof on the back there. There is no precedent on the house for a metal roof, though they do like the look of it. The diagonal half timbering is just an echo of what's going on above. I think we've all been there, seen too many shoes in the mudroom before, and that's pretty much what's driving this whole thing.
Okay, are there any questions from commissioners?
Yes. The new windows, what manufacturer? What?
This is a Marvin G2 Ultimate.
Okay, and is that aluminum clad?
Yes,
Okay.
aluminum clad.
And
That's what's existing in the addition that's currently in the back.
okay, and are there older windows on the home that are of another era?
There are, we did a window replacement for the front of the house earlier, or last year, I believe. But there are double hungs and casements throughout the house. Some original.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions by commissioners? Okay, why don't we have you sit down and we can have a discussion? Is there any public comment to this case? No? Do the commissioners have anything they would like to discuss? Or is somebody ready to make a motion? Beth, you willing to make? Excellent, thank you.
All right, I would like to move that for the case at 2330 Orrington Avenue in the Northeast Historic District, case 22 Pres-0051, that we issue a certificate of appropriateness to demolish a rear volume wooden stoop, alter the fenestration on a single-story circa 1990s rear addition, and construct a single-story bay addition at the principal structure's rear volume. The applicable standards are alterations 1 through 10, construction 1 through 8, and 10 through 15.
Is there a second?
Second.
Mark seconds. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? So that the motion carries with 7 ayes and 0 opposed. Carlos? Okay, excellent. Thank you. All right, Cade, if you want to read the next case, please.
1217 Michigan Avenue is the landmark in the Lakeshore Historic District, 22 PRES 0049. Gary Shoemaker, architect, submits for a certificate of appropriateness to construct a 2-story detached frame garage in the rear yard. Applicable standards, construction 1 through 8 and 10 through 16. When you're ready, Gary, I'll pull the drawings up.
Good evening. My name is Gary Shoemaker. I'm with Shoemaker Design Associates. We're here representing the owners of 1217 Michigan Avenue. We've come to you tonight with a proposal for a detached coach house behind this existing structure. You may all recall we've talked about demolishing this garage in a previous application. We've shown here again the photographs of the weak battery. There we go. Again, you've seen the existing photographs of the garage. Its deteriorating condition hasn't improved since we last discussed this garage. So none of those have changed. Let's see here. Do I get to forward this, or do you do it? Okay, that's fine. So again, wow. Bring my own pointer next time. There we go. So the existing garage, as you recall, sits back here. This is just beyond the rear of the house. The proposal remains to demolish the garage, the parking pads, the existing hot tub patio, the existing stone porch, and to, if you'd like to give me the next slide, Cade, to construct a new detached garage and coach house in that, yes. And to construct a new detached coach house in the rear quarter of the house. This is an as-of-right proposal. This meets all the zoning requirements, all the setback requirements, all the height requirements. We have introduced a small, we've introduced a small pergola that allows the covered protection between the garage and the house. If you recall, last time we talked a little bit about affording our owners an opportunity to stay out of the rain and carrying groceries and whatnot in and out of the garage. The rest of the rear yard, the porch, the patio, and the pool surface remain as we had presented them last time. If you could give me the next slide, please. From the roof plan, you can see the pergola structures and the slopes of those roofs. It's also clear in here the setbacks from the side yard condition here. Also, if you recall, this is a zero lot line party wall building that exists to the south. These open structures are bracketing a stone wall between those things that provides a bit of privacy and security for the pool on the other side. This wall is constructed of stone similar to the porch piers in the front. If you recall, one of the things we tried to introduce in this second phase of the project were some of the details, the historic fabric that came from the original structure of the house. If you could give me the next slide, please. Thank you. So this is the coach house in context. This is the coach house pulled aside so we can talk about the materials a little bit. As indicated in here, we've taken the proportions and the massing of the existing house, and we've replicated them on the front of this. And there's one error here. There's a spandrel panel that has a decorative plaster detail in it, which we're replicating on the front of the garage itself. You can see the proportions of the garage door and the proportions of the vertical dormer on the front, and again, the introduction of that small demi-lune window in that upper roof. Again, taking the roof proportions, the colors, the materials, the use of scallop siding and shingle to differentiate the dormers from the sloped gambrel walls of the house. We're continuing those, which we talked about last time, being an important aspect of this particular property. The owners have asked us to continue to use the same details and the same fenestration and the same proportions that the house has always had. The idea being that this is, again, a subordinate secondary structure, although detached. If you could please give me the next slide, Kate. So again, this is the south facade. You can see the structure is set 10 feet back from this porch roof, which is an open porch on the back of the house. Here is that low garden wall that I talked about that offers some privacy and some protection for the swimming area. The structure of the coach house in the rear yard, and the pergola structure here. This remains open, light passing through. One of the things we'll talk a little bit about as it relates to the standards and the depth of this garage. This garage is located approximately 103 feet from the street, from the property line at the front. By opening this up and allowing this pergola to be translucent, allow light to pass through it, we also front light this garage, which will accentuate the notion that these are detached and separate structures. This is in no way an addition to the existing house any longer. If I could please have the next slide. Again, we've gone back to the same windows. We're reusing the same Pella products we proposed in the previous edition. If you could go to the next slide for me. Plot of survey you've seen, I believe. Kate had asked us to show this, which was a piece of information that we were asked to provide in our last conversation with you that shows the relative proximity of this structure to the fenestration on the adjacent building. I would also note this is the coach house in the adjacent building. These are similar in structure and size and proportion relative to their primary buildings. Again, this is a large opening, providing light in front and between these structures at this time. If I could have the next slide. I think we're getting to the renderings, aren't we? There we go. So again, the notion that we're proposing a mini version of the house. We're taking the same proportions, the same details, the same dormers, and the same overall aesthetic feeling of this, setting it back behind the front of the house so that it appears in the distance as subordinate to the main structure. Go ahead. This is the street view. As we also discussed, there are very few views of this backyard and this property from the public way, given the size and constraints of the site. This would be obviously from the sidewalk and the parkway in the front. Clearly, this is a separate structure. There's daylight passing through here. This this is a subordinate structure and a secondary coach house to the primary building. So, okay. And again, very similar. This is as if you were on the sidewalk directly in front of the house. And as I mentioned, there's that plaster panel with the decorative work. The intention is to put that in here, and I apologize, that's a bit of a relic. We considered at one point making that a diamond glass window to top light a small powder room in the upper story of the coach house, but that has since been rethought, so it is no longer a window. So, and the pergola structure in the back, again, diminutive and secondary, providing some cover between the structures, but also in keeping with the porch structures and the decorative corbelling and dental work throughout the house. Kate, I believe that's my last slide, is it not? Okay.
Okay, are there any questions by commissioners? Go ahead, Mark.
Could you illuminate whether there were design considerations that led you to locate the garage right at the setback versus, 5 feet back, as you had with the
5 feet back.
you originally had complied with the 5-foot setback for the attached structure.
That's correct.
And now, I
That's a
understand the
zoning
zoning, from a zoning perspective, you're now, for a detached structure, you're allowed to go 3 feet. But were there also design reasons why you chose to go 3 feet rather than 5?
Well, obviously, the direct access to the garage doors and the structure. Now that this is a coach house, we've had to integrate a stair, which required us to shift that over just a little bit. It also, quite honestly, and you can see it in this image, allowed us to shift the structure to the south just a little bit, which allowed more of a view through that site as you're passing from the public way, seeing through the depth of that site, perhaps to the tree line in the distance.
Is the width of the garage the same, or is it greater than the earlier proposal?
It is slightly wider, maybe about a foot or so. But again, I want to reiterate that the earlier proposal, this isn't a version of the earlier proposal. This is a new project.
Yeah, I understand. We need to just understand the background. We're getting a lot of public comment that we have to understand. And,
So
again,
the-
without commenting on.
The side yard setback requirement for a detached accessory structure is 3 feet.
Yeah, we understand.
One of our guiding scope requirements in this project was to create as much open space and usable yard space for this family as we possibly could. We had done that before by trying to pull this as far forward and allow that space in the rear yard. Now that this is detached and we've pushed the garage 10 feet back, we need to recapture some of that yard space by reclaiming roughly 2 feet by moving that over. But again, the introduction of a stair inherently makes this structure wider than the previous structure. So,
Okay, and then what are the considerations in not having the garage and generally the current location of the current garage?
well, there are several. The reclaiming of outdoor space is important to this family and to this project, and I think to the nature of this historic district. So moving that garage off of that back property line was important to us. We also don't have the lot coverage to allow it. In order to get a driveway and parking area wide enough to address a two-bay garage, you'll see in the zoning, we're at the limit. Extending that garage or pushing it further back would require minor zoning variance. And we have been unable to achieve any minor considerations on zoning for this property, having tried in our last application. I don't know if you remember, but the gist of our last application, which required a 2.3% increase in building lot coverage, netted a 4% decrease in overall lot coverage. This maintains the status quo. This requires no consideration from zoning.
Can I, sorry. Two things. I wanted to ask a question to follow up on what Mark was saying, but I actually compliment you on drawing number 1, proposed south elevation. Even though you've made the mass of the building bigger by shifting it back, you're actually putting less building in front of the adjacent windows than you were before, which, as you well know, based on the number of people that are coming, have sent letters and are coming to speak, was in fact a big issue. I'm curious why, since you received approval for the last scheme from with modifications to your proposal, you're now showing us something entirely different, but I think, did you answer that by saying that
I
you
did.
required a minor
I
variation?
did. It
which
required
you-
a minor variation,
you
which
didn't
is
get it.
typically done at staff level.
Yeah.
And we were denied that minor variation.
Oh, okay.
And we did pursue an appeal of that, and after consultation with our client, withdrew that appeal to pursue this. And I think you see in your packet, after quite a number of conversations, this project is the project that my client wishes to construct on this property.
Okay. Well, in my opinion, it's worked out nicely. I think this is a much better scheme than the one we were asked to look at before. So you know how I'm voting.
Are there any other questions by commissioners? Okay, Gary, why don't we have you take a seat, please? And then why don't we ask for public comment? So Cade will read off the names who have signed up for public comment. And again, we ask that you keep your comments to 3 minutes or less, and that they stay within the application the standards for the commission and within our purview. Go ahead, Cade.
Ms. Nandico, would you like to give a comment? When you come to the podium, just state your name as well as your address.
So Polly Nandico, 1213 Michigan Avenue. And I'm on the first floor, just south of the project. In some spaces, 3 feet, in other spaces, less than 3 feet, it appeared, from the side of our building. Still windows being blocked. There were a couple, I think your purview, a couple areas, the street view, the south view, and the west view, which were of consideration for this project. You know, if it could be pushed back 15 feet so my windows wouldn't be blocked, they could have a longer garden wall and perhaps some harmony and consideration for other people who live there. Our building is 120 years old, and that window, well, the couple windows that are blocked there on the first floor belong to me. Someone has been looking out those windows for 120 years. Our neighbor had a whole article written about her concern and appreciation for light, and you know, I would think to avoid hypocrisy, that would be a considerate thing to move it back and show some decency. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Citron, did you want to give comment, or you just signed in? Okay. Mr. Denenberg? Just a reminder to state your name and your address, please. Thank you.
My name is Stephen Denenberg. I live at 1213 Michigan on the 3rd floor there. Appreciate the opportunity to speak about the case. I've submitted written remarks with reasons why this proposal should not get a certificate of appropriateness, and I won't repeat those reasons here. I hope you've had a chance to read them. I will state again what I've written and stated in objections to my neighbor's previous plan for the backyard. They can tear down their old garage, build a new one, and build a deck and install a pool, but they must do it appropriately for where they are. If they can do it as appropriate, respecting the history of their home, the history of their landmark neighboring building, the history of an aspect of the 1200 block of Michigan Avenue, and the standards of the Evanston Historic Preservation, then let them go at it. I'm not looking forward to the destruction and the construction, but they have a right to do such a project. I would like to say a little bit about our neighboring building. I've lived there for 26 years. The building was constructed to be the Melwood Apartments building in 1902. It has existed in tandem with the 1217 Michigan House for 120 years. The building's protected by landmark status, and so in a sense it's watched over by the Historic Preservation Commission. The windows of our building are very much a part of the history. They've been looked at and through for 120 years. And the windows of that era are a continuing concern and of I think, the purview of the Historic Preservation Commission. The windows, the attitude, I believe, is that windows should be preserved and restored, and really only replace them when it's absolutely necessary. It would seem to me that if the windows are of importance in historic standards, that they shouldn't be covered by an engulfing garage. That there's an important part of the view of that building. The left wall or the north wall of the building is very much historic presence as it stands. Now, just to veer off just slightly, because a kitchen window is like a literary cliche. People are always gazing out a kitchen window while doing some tasks. And the view doesn't have to be anything more than the sky and the treetops and rooftops and the weather. So imagine if your kitchen window was supplanted by a 10-foot high blank wall 3 feet away. Imagine it's a window you've been looking through for years, that generations of people have been looking through for a century. That 10-foot high blank wall is what this plan proposes. Now, again, I don't oppose my neighbors having a new garage, a deck, a pool, but enhancing their quality of life should not diminish someone else's. And certainly, in this neighborhood, it shouldn't ignore history. Thanks.
Thank you.
Were there any other members who didn't have an opportunity to sign up who would like to give public comment?
Okay. Then, Gary, why don't we ask you up to the podium and you can provide any input to the public comment? I know, just to summarize, and I'm sure Gary can expand on this, but he's obviously already talked about the fact that moving the garage back resulted in a zoning variance which was not approved. So I know that was commented on as a potential solution, but it sounds like that's already obviously been tried and was not approved. But if you moved it back, it would require a zoning variance.
Would absolutely require zoning variance.
If you have any comments, please come to the mic so people can hear you. Thank you.
Well, I'll let Gary speak to the comments.
If you're going to permit extra commentary, I'd rather make my comments after the culmination of whatever additional commentary you're going to provide.
I mean, I believe, in my opinion, that unless there is any other public comment, I believe that you guys have major comments, correct? Okay.
And again, relative to the purview of this commission, zoning is not.
Understand.
And we're not asking for zoning. We're not asking for zoning relief, so that shouldn't be a part of this.
Understood.
The deliberations of this commission. I certainly understand some of the concerns. I would also remind this commission that the building to the south has a long and storied history in this community. It is the foundation of the zoning code that we have today, and was perhaps the beginning of a much harder line taken on party wall windows and lot line conditions. So while I respect that, this is a party wall building built on a zero lot line. These windows were not destined to exist forever. If ever another building were to be built there, had the zoning code not changed at that time, those windows would have been bricked up a long time ago. So while I understand the concern, it should not preclude my client from being able to build appropriately and as of right on their property. So while I understand the anxiety with this, I think we've provided a very appropriate project. It is in keeping with the historic standards, and I think it prolongs and it contributes to the landmark status of this house and to this district. So I appreciate your consideration on that.
Okay, thank you. Why don't we close the comments then, and let's discuss as a commission. Do commissioners have any discussion items that they'd like to talk about?
Yeah, I have. I understand we can't move the garage because of zoning, but under standards for construction number 11, directional expression of facades. I mean, I don't know how we apply that because it's the current residents of 1213 Michigan, if this is approved, would be looking at a garage with no windows or it would just be like a blank facade, I mean, is there a way of like addressing the fact that like they're gonna be having, you know, a large void of blank wall 3 feet away from their primary residential windows? Or, I don't know.
And Cade, you can chirp in, but I think we have to discuss the case more in the concept of the actual proposed garage, right? And I think we need to steer a little bit away of what's going to be seen out windows of adjacent properties and stay within the realm of heights, rhythm of spaces, you know, rhythm of voids, those types of situations, just because I do believe that's more of our focus for this case. Whereas I do understand the issues with the neighboring building, but I do think that we have to kind of stay within our purview on that. Unless, Cade, you think that I missed.
No, I think that's right. I think standard for 11 directional expression of facades relates more to the orientation of a primary facade versus a secondary facade as it relates to the streetscape. So I'm not sure that really applies in this instance.
I don't even know if you can see that side facade from the street, and it's my understanding that the facades that we discuss relative to the standards are ones that are visible from a public way, which in this case, I don't think the side of the garage really is. The only thing that I can say, speaking as a commissioner, is that the problem that the residents of the adjacent building perceive is one that the zoning ordinance was written to give relief from. We have no way to take action except to evaluate what's shown us in terms of the standards, which are online and available to everyone that's here tonight. Sadly, architects aren't required to take a Hippocratic oath. Is this a wonderful thing to do to the windows and the neighbors? No, but it certainly is within the rights of the owner of this property to build the structure the way it's been designed.
So we did receive a lot of the public comment, and Cade put it online, and all the commissioners, I believe, have gone through that. So I don't want people to think that we haven't received all of those comments and gone through them and read them before we've come out here and reviewed this case. I did note several standards that were in those public comments that were stated, which were the height, standard 1, the rhythm of solids to voids of the facades, which is standard 4, rhythm of spacing and structures on streets, which is standard 5, and then standard 8, which is the roof shape, and then standard 10, which is the scale of structure. So when I went through these standards and I looked at the application, I actually think that the height and the scale of this coach house is very much in line with the landmark home that exists. I think it fits within that fabric. It's very similar to what we see on many other coach house proposals. So I don't feel that there is any, I do feel it satisfies those standards. And as far as the rhythms of the voids, the solids to voids and the spacing of the structures on the street, again, I do think that there was a lot of care taken to make this coach house look very much in the same fabric and the same aesthetic as the landmark house. So that would be my take on the standards that I noticed in the public comments. And just in the standards in general, there are other standards, of course, but I feel that those were the ones that were pointed out. I don't know if there are other commissioners that would like to comment to that as well.
Yeah, I will. I agree. I took a look at the standards that were raised from the public as well as the ones that I had kind of already circled as concerns. And walking in front of the building, in front of the house and the apartment building, I was satisfied with the rhythm of the spacing and the structures on the streets. I tried to imagine exactly how far it'd be set back and the windows and everything. This is an extremely helpful sheet. I appreciate that. Cade, maybe for other ones that are close to a property line, this kind of a drawing would be great for future projects as well. And the scale of the structure was the only one that then continued to give me a little bit of pause. But I see what's happened. I'm okay with the actual scale and how it mimics so many of the features of the current landmark. I'm glad that that's not a horizontal window in between those two double hungs. That's a nice nod to the front house also, with the decorative panel.
If you want to step up to the podium.
My understanding was the proposal was for a detached garage. This is the first I'm hearing that it's a coach house. Is that a different application, or, because
I think they're just two kind of similar terms for the same thing.
Really?
I mean, two-story accessory structure, two-story coach house, two-story garage.
Okay.
It may relate to how they intend to use the upper story, but that's not within the purview of the commission to
Okay, and
to
now
review.
which commission is that? You know, if someone's going to be living, 2.9 feet away from my kitchen.
I mean, whether they
Is that
decide to,
zoning or land use, where do we go?
there's a separate set of zoning regulations if they
Okay.
decide to use it for, to be like an accessory dwelling unit or something.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you.
Go ahead, Mark.
Yeah, I mean, I've looked carefully at the standards for construction, and, while I heard the other arguments relating to the standards unrelated to the setback, it's really hard to find any standard that applies to the setback, which is really the issue, and that, I think everybody feels bad about. The zoning code obviously specifically addresses setbacks, and that's really, it really is a zoning issue about what zoning permits. Again, I think it's legitimate to question whether your neighbor should use the full scope of their legal rights and to the detriment of their neighbor. And that's a very valid concern, but it's not something we, as applying the preservation code, have any right to apply.
And I do think that the Michigan, this Michigan block is problematic. So it's always been because it does not have an alley. Like, we've had several cases that have come in front of us on this, in this area, that have been problematic. So I do think it's a struggle to find a good solution for everyone on this, in this area. Any other, if you want to step to the podium.
Just one quick question. What's the definition of a rear yard? Because there's about 20 feet behind this proposed garage.
So the zoning definition of a rear yard is anything behind the rear elevation of the house.
Okay.
Are there any other discussion? If we have no discussion, is someone willing to make a motion on this case? Go ahead, John, thank you.
I'd like to make a motion regarding 1217 Michigan Avenue landmark in Lakeshore Historic District, case 22 Pres 0049. Gary Shoemaker, architect, I move that we issue a certificate of appropriateness to construct a two-story detached frame garage in the rear yard, applicable standards, construction 1 through 8 and 10 through 16.
Is there a second? Stewart, second. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? And the motion carries 7-0. Okay, thank you. Kate, if you can read the next case in the record, please.
2418 Park Place. This is an individually registered landmark, 22 PRES 0050. Patrick Jean-Jacques, owner, submits for a certificate of appropriateness to demolish a single-story greenhouse addition and construct a two-story circular stair at the rear of the property, alter the principal structure's rear volume fenestration, construct a two-story rear porch addition and stairway, and construct a wrought iron railing at the existing front stoop. Applicable standards: demolition 1 through 5, alteration 1 through 10, construction 1 through 8, and 10 through 15. And let me pull up your presentation, Patrick.
Thank you. Thank you in advance for your consideration. As I mentioned, or as Cade mentioned, my name is Patrick Jean-Jacques. 2 years ago, we purchased 2418 Park Place, and we enlisted the services of a George Manderis architect to assist us with developing a rear porch as well as design for the front of the home. Unfortunately, George Manderis passed away on the 20th of last month, just before we were able to be appointed for this meeting for approval for the certificate of appropriateness. I've had the pleasure of talking with some of you as I've engaged in this journey to make changes and modifications to the home. In speaking with George, what was very important to us was maintaining the style of the main home when developing the rear of the porch. As a side note, which probably isn't appropriate, this is my first home, and it was really important when I purchased the house to try and respect the history of the home. It was built in 1875, and this was George and my effort in doing so. Here you'll see the current or the proposed site plan. As you can see, this is actually the proposed rear area, as well as these are some minor changes that we plan to do to the front of the home as well. If we can go to the next slide. I do plan on walking you through some of the front porch improvements. And if you can go to the next one, subsequently as well, walk you through some of the rear improvements that we plan to do as well. Here you can see the current state of the home. To the left, you can see that we were really trying to continue some of the style that existed in the home. It's a bit dark here, but you can see some of the posts and the pipe railing that exists that we are pretty sure is of error and was there when the home was originally built. And so our hope in the proposed approach is to continue with the same post styles and replicate that at different areas. I do have 2 daughters, which are right there, and it was important for us also to maintain the safety. As of now, there's nothing here from a railing perspective, and so it's our hope that we're able to actually to provide some type of protection in that area and maintain also this, the style of the home. If we go to the next slide, one thing that we would have to do is remove some of the railing that exists here. This, we believe, is not of error. It is actually some rails that were put in place, and they do not have any significance as it relates to the style of the home. They're very standard rails. As you can see, this area here, which is slightly gray, we are using this as our focal point in which we'll try and replicate across the home, as well as use this as well, mini versions to put railing here on the stairs, the front stairs. This next slide, did I do that, by the way? Is that, oh, okay, I now see I can do that. All right, great. This here will show kind of what our proposals are, some of the things that we really tried to, and I've spoken to it a bit. We plan to actually use masonry piers, which exist currently on one side of the home, and actually replicate it to the other side of the home to match the existing elevation. In addition, we plan to patch existing brick concrete as required. There seems to be some brick underneath. There was some, I don't know if it's skim coating of cement that they've done to patch it, and our hope is that we can actually get get underneath it and expose some of the brick, hopefully, and actually just either expose the brick itself or try and put a more permanent solution here. In addition to that, we plan on using the pipe railings or the pipe rails that exist. So there is pipe rails that exist here. We plan to replicate that through, and we do, once again, we felt that that was of error and really did justice to the home, if you will. You can see here that I've mentioned kind of the posts that we plan to use that will be replicated, and so we would add additional posts at these various points to ensure that we fully somewhat provide some protection from falling off of that front porch. I can go to the next one. This is just renderings of what the proposed future front porch will look like. We have the northwest view, the north view, as well as the northeast view. Now I'll walk you guys through the rear of the home that we plan on actually creating. This is the current state of the rear of the home. I did some slight research on the home. At some point, this home was actually a two-flat at a certain period in which there was a porch in the back of the home. I think in 1994, I believe, a steel staircase was put on the side of the home. We actually, and I'll show you this in the next slide, we actually plan on removing that steel staircase, spiral staircase, and you'll see it in the next slides. But you can see this is the proposed future. I will talk a little bit more about how we tried to, well, I can talk about it now, actually. We tried to really make sure that we followed a lot of the cornice and bracket styles that exist in the main portion of the home. We also tried to carry, instead of carry forward, carry back to the rear of the home the wrought iron, the use of wrought iron materials as well in the back of the home. George really tried to emphasize the use of Trek deck material to provide a more permanent solution instead of wood because of the durability of that. And you know, I followed his recommendations as such. In addition, some of the molding styles were something in which we thought would be a very appropriate stylistic factor to the home as well. So, there you go. Thank you. As I mentioned before, at the rear of the home, or the side rear of the home, we plan to remove this spiral staircase, as well as a greenhouse that was actually added. Both of these we know are not of error. I've talked to the prior owners, all living prior owners, and unfortunately I don't have the date in which the greenhouse was created, but this was also done, I believe in the 70s. Oh, no, sometime, you know, in the 70s. But our plan is to remove this in hopes of creating the actual deck in the rear. I've mentioned the wrought iron handrails that will be removed, but replaced with actual posts that are of era. Prior to the passing of George, I had one last revision request with George, and it was just an area in which we did not factor in. It was the actual removal of these small windows on the side of the. This is an addition that was added, also we think is not original, but these small windows are very small, and the purpose of actually closing them is because we plan to use these as closet space, and essentially they're very small, and we felt that it would be fine for us to actually do so. I do plan on updating the architectural plans to reflect that, but I did want to at least keep all of you informed that would potentially happen with your approval. Thank you. In addition to that, the on the west side of the home, we do plan to remove these windows. In particular, George emphasized that we can do, is it called an inset, where it can actually show that there was at one point a window there, and then allow, if at a later point someone else were to want to place a window there eventually, we at least wanted to respect that. That does fall in line with the front of the home. There is an inset that exists currently, and we felt that at least, at the very least, we could be able to do that as well. Thank you. This shows the openings that would occur for the back of the deck. We plan to actually open the rear so that we can have an outdoor-indoor type of concept on the rear of the deck. In addition, it shows that there would be downspouts that would be removed, as well as the door that is on the second floor. We did talk a little bit about how the home was a 2-unit at some point, and we do think that that possibly was one of the uses. This would, fully make sure that we converted fully to a single-family home and allow for us to really make use of that area in which, we would probably use as a closet. This just shows the different grades of the home and what will be shown. To the far right, we can see that there would be an area well in which you can enter into the basement. As well, you can see the stairs that would go up to the rear of the home. In addition, you see the stairs that would come up to the actual deck. Here you can see the deck of the main floor, and this just shows a little renderings of potentials that we can have there. I'm a big fan of the grill, but that's something that we'll be placing there as well. And then to the far left, the second level of the actual deck as well. This will be there will be a covering on top of it as well, as you can see in the future renderings. Here, I did want to add details as it relates to the window. The window details that will be placed will be extruded aluminum. The miter is butt jointed, no overlap, and flush mounted. Essentially, it's a wood-clad unit with extruded aluminum. I plan to work with, I've been working with Pella, and Pella has worked with the National Park Service to ensure that this was historically accurate. And so if we are approved, we plan on using the Pella windows as well. Here you can see some detail as it relates to the wrought irons and how we plan these stylistic points in which we felt were very appropriate, and also added a bit of detail to the actual rear porch as well. This shows the actual, and we talked about this a little bit, but this shows the actual, I think it's called the inset of the side of the reason why we wanted this is because this is where the kitchen will exist, and we plan on having actual cabinets on that wall in particular. Here you can see kind of how I think these are the proposed footings and how they would where they would occur, and it's this, the east elevation of the home, as well as the proposed railing that would exist in the front of the home. Once again, these are renderings of how it would look, and really we wanted to emphasize kind of some of the same detail that exists in the main home to make it, to simulate exactly how the home would look in the to follow the rhythm, I guess you guys say rhythm and spacing of and the aesthetics of the main home. Is that the last one, perhaps?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Are there any commissioner questions?
Yes.
Do you know the history of the spiral staircase?
Beyond the actual, I've talked with the owners that actually built it, and it was built in, it was installed in 1994. I know that they worked with someone in Wisconsin in order to actually do it, so it's Midwest. But I don't think it has any historical significance from a perspective of not from like a Victorian era or anything like that.
The stairway, if the house was a two-flat at one point, I'm sure the stairway was added as a legal second means of egress from the second floor, and I'm very pleased that you're removing it.
Is the front porch, you're not changing the dimensions of what's there now, is that correct?
I am not.
Oh,
That
okay.
is correct.
Got it, thank you.
I have a question about, excuse me, the railing on the front porch, and this is also maybe directed at my other commissioners. That I don't object to the aesthetics of it at all, but I'm curious, since it doesn't come anywhere near meeting current building code, has that been discussed with the building department? Does someone get an exception on the rule in a landmark situation like this?
It's something he would have to apply for. There's no guarantee that it would be approved. You could apply to have something that's not code compliant because it has some kind of historical significance to the home. But I think some changes to it could probably be approved administratively as a modification to it. If anyone has any suggestions about what that might look like, it might be an appropriate time to discuss that.
If it doesn't go through the building department, your architect or your late architect has designed a wrought iron railing for the back of the house, which I think would probably look pretty nice and certainly meets code that you could use at the front of the house.
Okay. All right. Absolutely.
Are there any other questions? Okay, why don't we ask you to take a seat? Thank you.
Thank you for
I
your
assume
time.
is there any public comment to this case? Okay. Is there any commissioner discussion? Does anyone want to talk about the potential for recommendations for that front railing? Or should we just allow that to happen during the building code?
By code, you can no longer do a horizontal rail like that, even if you were to reduce the gap, plus the railing looks much too low. So this is something that whoever you move forward with as an architect will have to discuss with the building department. So I don't think it's in our purview to make aesthetic suggestions about the front railing.
I have a question about that for staff. If they have to make a change, or we're assuming they're going to have to make a change to this, right? And we do not give them a recommendation, will they have to come back, or would that be a minor?
I think it's something we could approve as a minor modification, but I could always send it to some of the commissioners to ask their feedback on it as well. I mean, it may...
I mean, what would the actual process be on that? I mean, if you were to move forward and submit for a building permit showing that railing, it would probably come back to you or to your architect as a correction. If you then altered the railing, would it need to come back to Kate and Carlos for administrative review?
That was my question.
It will come back to us, and first of all, it has to meet the code. It has to be at least 36 inches high. If I may, the railing in the back, it's very well established, and it appears that the commission doesn't have any objections to it. So maybe matching the two styles, front and back, might be a way to go. I personally feel that the way this current fence on the front is designed, it doesn't seem to be the period of the building or even the style. So we'll be happy to consult with at least 2 commissioners to see if the proposed railing, if required to be modified by code, meets the standards. Because I think it will be a burden on the applicant to come back for a railing the
Right.
whole month.
Right,
So I think that you're giving us some direction that as long as it's meeting the code and that staff can make a decision after consultation with at least the commissioners, we can make it administrative review.
The only aesthetic concern that I might have with duplicating the rear railing on the front porch, if it goes that route, would be that I'm seeing a 42-inch dimension from the deck to the top of the rail on the back, and I'm not suggesting that that be lowered, but I'm not sure aesthetically that that will look so great on the front of the house. I certainly think that the same style rail at a 3-foot height would be acceptable, at least to me.
I will agree with that. That's why I mentioned the 36 inches rather than the 42. But I think it's a good observation.
I would think that those posts that are there in the front would stay too with the finials. There would be some integration of that for the front. You don't need it in the back, but.
Yeah, you can offer your comments to this.
Yeah, if I may add, I am not opposed to actually sourcing posts that are taller, similar to the main post in the front, the existing main post. I'm not sure exactly what the measurement is, but I'm working with a preservation consultant, actually, who I believe would be able to find the taller posts so that it can hopefully maintain the height that we need on all the way around. I'm not tied to actually having the same height, the shorter height. So if that's an issue, I'm not opposed to that. I would, in my opinion, would prefer to keep and maintain at least the style of those posts in the front of the home, if possible, instead of what's at the rear of the home. But I obviously respect your opinions as well. So, but
Well,
I can do that.
I'm sorry, I thought you were done.
I'm done.
So there's a code issue with how that's designed right now. So we're anticipating that you're going to have to make a change to that.
Yes.
So we were trying to figure out what we could recommend so you wouldn't have to come back to us. Right? I mean, that's the.
Yeah, I think, but I don't think it's the design of the post. I think it's the
Right.
height of the post, which you've already
Right.
obviously said you, and then I think it's the horizontal.
The horizontal.
Railing. I think, and Stuart, you probably can talk to it, but I think you need the vertical.
Yeah, the verticals, and then there's a spacing that's specified by code,
We
which
just
I
wanna
think
make
is
sh-
currently 4 inches.
Yeah. So it's the
Yeah,
4-inch
which-
spacing, and they would
Yeah,
require vertical.
yeah.
So we
I
want to
mean-
make sure
I mean,
you're
the thing is
aware.
that that's going to change what that railing looks like a lot. I think that the commissioners are probably in agreement that that would look fine aesthetically with your house, but that leaves me at least in a bit of a quandary about how we should approve or proceed, rather, and whether we can approve it the way it is, or whether we should just ask that you come back with it redrawn. We don't need to see it again. I guess would you do it as an administrative review?
Yeah, I think most typically in an instance like this, I would review it administratively, but send it to the officers of the commission and ask if they have any feedback.
I'd be willing to help with that if and when that comes, sure.
Okay.
And I'm comfortable with that
Yeah, I'd be
decision.
happy to look at it as well.
Okay, so then I think that, we'll discuss it, but I think it will be something where it will just be, you'll work through Kate and Carlos.
Okay.
And
All
when
right.
you go through. Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you. So then, Sarah, would you be willing to make a motion with that recommendation?
Motion to approve the C of A, or just?
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Well, should we send this gentleman away with the understanding that except for the railing, the design that he submitted is approved? by us for a certificate of occupancy?
Yeah, my
once that
understanding-
change has been made?
Well, my understanding is that we are on the idea of approving the design with administrative review of the front railing, assuming that it comes back from code-related requirements. Is that the consensus?
Yeah, well, of the front. I mean, we haven't talked about the back yet.
Oh, okay, well then let's talk about the back.
I don't think we have.
Okay, well, I mean, let's discuss it. Do you have discussion items for that?
The only thing that I wanted to ask my fellow commissioners about is I was trying to remember the term for this, the sort of filigree corner details there, and whether those seem appropriate for the house. I think it's okay.
The design, if you go to the line drawing, seems to be based on the design of the bracketing under the eaves.
Yeah, I was thinking the same, that they were matching the existing. Is that something we can ask to confirm? Can you confirm?
Sorry, if you can come up and
Sure,
speak.
sorry.
The question is that, well, go ahead and Beth, you can ask.
Sure.
Or Sarah.
For the new brackets that are on the rear porch and the corners, is that design related to the brackets that are on the existing house?
That is correct. As you can see here, there are brackets that exist here in which we tried, George attempted to replicate throughout this, just to stylistically seem like it all was together. I don't know.
So that's what's going on up in the cornice level. Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry, are the two renderings consistent with each other with respect to the corners? They look pretty different to me. I mean, I at least can't spot that kind of filigree corners in the other render. I mean, I don't think they're the same design.
One looks to be an adaptation of the other. If you look at E, proposed west side elevation, when I blow that up on my screen, it's similar but not identical, which I don't have a problem with.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what I was asking about.
Miss, can you tell us from the drawings which one is the most accurate as far as what you think the design is going to be? Because there seems to be a discrepancy on the elevations in terms of the overall design of the brackets.
If I were to answer, I'm not sure if I think honestly there would have to be. I can double check to see what the picture of at my house, but I think the rear of the porch is. I'm sure we can try our best to source ones that replicate it, as much as close as possible to what exists at the top of the house here. If I'm understanding the question correctly, you're asking which one is more accurate of a representation between the two, and my response is that I can try, we can try our best to ensure that we try and find ones that are very similar to this.
Can I comment on this? If you look at F, proposed east side elevation, when you see the existing brackets under the overhang drawn slightly obliquely at the bay, they look to be about 6 to 8 inches in thickness, and I think maybe some of the concern here is that you can go to builder catalogs and buy 3/4 inch thick filigree stuff like this, which is actually kind of tacky looking, and that what we're all secretly hoping is that when this is detailed, it'll actually have a thickness that's equivalent to the 5.5-inch posts that you're showing on the rear porch, which I think will give it a kind of heft-and quality that would be similar to the brackets on the house, although there's no way to really tell how thick those are supposed to be from the, well, actually the perspective makes it look like it's set back about 1/2 inch from the face of the column. And the pattern's a little different, but I think that's, the purview of the design and the architect.
I mean, what I'm hearing is that we want to match them as closely as possible as far as the design and as far as the thickness and the construction.
So
Match
since
the existing as closely.
Since I brought this up, I feel compelled to say something else, which is that I actually, it's fine with me if they are not totally matching. So I wouldn't obligate them to spend a lot of money and time to get it to be custom made or whatever. So my concern was what Stuart was describing, where it was just kind of lacy looking in the drawing. And this house does not it has that kind of stately, it's kind of monumental type of restrained Italianate, whereas this comes across on the drawings as having a kind of lightness that I just wasn't sure about. But if we're all okay with this kind of filigree, if we think that it matches the house in spirit, then I'm fine with it. I wasn't sure. That's why I brought it up. I don't know if that helps or not.
I mean, you think the idea was to try to match what was there?
Yeah, well, I mean, in
without the
spirit.
added
Yeah,
lacy.
but I don't want the
Right.
the homeowner, I don't want
Maybe
him to
they can err on a little bit more of a restrained,
Yeah, that's
as
my
opposed to
feeling.
more of a ornamental looking piece. So
This could end up being a really expensive thing if they
Yeah.
feel like we are obligating them to really reproduce it. And I want to just be clear that that's not what, right, Stuart? That's not what we're exactly saying.
yeah, within reason. Try to match the style, not necessarily
Yeah.
the exact
something,
design.
something that's in keeping with it.
And I think
rather
if
than
you have
duplicating
questions
it.
along the way, you can always obviously reach out to Cade, and he can talk with, I think Sarah and John have offered to help with the front railing as a subcommittee, so I'm sure that you guys would be
Yeah.
willing to look at something if there are questions.
Okay.
On the,
And if I can just differentiate, there's the new brackets right under the roof line that are painted the black and the white, the contrasting colors. Those would be the ones that we're looking to be more hefty. And then the more lacy ones that are in between each of the porch openings. I understand what you're saying, that it maybe changes that style a little bit, about kind of adding a lightness to that is different from the rest of the house. I'd be fine if they didn't have that, the ones in between, the lighter lacy ones.
I'm fine with removing if needed, and I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No problem. And I wouldn't require that. I mean, I think it's okay, but it would look just as good without it, in my opinion, too. But keep your big ones up at the top roof line.
And just to make sure that I'm understanding, do you mind if I point?
Oh, yeah, good idea.
Are we which ones are you describing that there's no need to?
Yes, those are the good, the nice hefty ones that you
Yes.
want to look similar, but they don't have to be matchy-matchy to the
Yes.
original ones. And then those are the lacy ones
Yes.
that, in my opinion, you could give or take.
Okay, and I'm fine with that. I mean,
It's an additional stylistic element that's not found elsewhere on the house, that's all.
Right.
Yeah, I think if,
This
I
is
think
this
if
is what
you
I was
saw the
referring
drawing
to.
without those, you would think that the proportions of the columns of the posts were too thin, even though, a 6x6 post is going to hold that up just fine. mean,
I think-
if you
I
look
think it
at
would
the
be
drawing
fine
and
either way.
Imagine it without some element there.
I mean, adding to the comments from the commission about the detail, one of the things that is important to keep in mind is that this is not the rebuilding of an original rear porch. It is the addition of a two-story porch that, according to the standards, if you can summarize the 17 of them, has to be compatible and minimize adverse effect. And I think that in all respects, all the comments that you heard from the commissioners is basically they're addressing that, not trying to go too much into replicating everything or making to the minute detail. I think that overall seems to be compatible and minimize adverse effects. So I think that with the assistance from two commissioners and staff, I think you're probably going to have a nice design to submit for permit.
Thank you.
Yes, I will say it's a very thorough application. We appreciate all the detail you've put into it. It's much more detailed than what we would normally see, so we appreciate that.
Thank you.
With that said, is there a way then we can make a motion with the subcommittee of commissioners and a staff review of any of these items that might come up? Sarah, would you be willing to make that?
I can try. We're ready to make the motion then? All right. I would like to move to approve a certificate of appropriateness for 2418 Park Place, landmark 22 Pres 0050. Patrick Jean-Jacques, did I pronounce that? Patrick Jean-Jacques, owner, submits for a certificate of appropriateness to demolish a single-story greenhouse addition and two-story circular stair at the rear of the property, alter the principal structure's rear volume fenestration, construct a two-story rear porch addition and stairway, and construct a wrought iron railing at the existing front stoop. This is the part where I have to add.
Yeah, railing to be approved administratively.
To be approved administratively if the wrought iron railing at the existing front stoop needs to be revised to meet code, to be approved administratively with the assistance of two commission members and staff. Applicable standards, demolition 1 through 5, alteration 1 through 10, construction 1 through 8, and 10 through 15.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Stewart seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries 7-0. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, Cade, you want to read the last case, please?
The last case is 548 Judson Avenue in the Lakeshore Historic District. This case number is 19 PRES 0262. Maria Nanos, owner, seeks approval of substantial modifications to a previously approved certificate of appropriateness. 19 PRES 0262 for construction of a new two-story single-family residence and detached two-story coach house and garage. Alterations, they primarily include changes to the structure's roof form, pattern of fenestration, including window locations, sizes and operating style, exterior cladding, and front porch dimension and detailing. Applicable standards, construction 1 through 8 and 10 through 16.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Maria Nanos with my spouse, Lynn Briskin, in the white back there. We actually live at 750 Florence at present, and hopefully in the year 2022, we will be moving into this home. You probably heard this a lot from people who got approval from you in February of 2020, and it's been very interesting, to say the least. So I'd like to walk you through, like Kate has been tremendously helpful with us to talk about these changes that we've had. I think you got the packet there listed. How we did this was AA was existing and AA proposed. We just followed through that. So we could just start with the first one. We changed the front door. So the existing that was approved had a little transom up on the top. And just so you recall, this is a brand new construction. Okay. And then the next photo, or the next picture, shows the front door with no transom. Next, we had The initial plan was to have 3 gables. In consultation with the architect and that team, they had suggested that that was looking a little too busy for the style of the house, and that it didn't serve a function, that it was simply for aesthetics. And so we all agreed to remove it. So the next BB shows what it would look like without that 3rd gable. The next one shows the porch. So as you can, maybe I can use this, but as you can see on, where Kate is kind of showing there on the left-hand side. So if you're facing the street, the wall came out, I know the dimension is on there somewhere, came out, and then the original design was that it wasn't even. It popped out maybe 2 feet. And again, we just agreed that this didn't look very balanced, so the next picture would show that those are in fact even, which kind of closed off that front porch a little bit. Little more privacy because the home to the south, their front porch faces north, which means we would kind of be staring at one another. So we thought to give it a little more enclosure. So that's what we're proposing. And the rest are windows. So again, the architect suggested it's better to put windows in and then you can always take them out rather than add them in. And as we got rolling with the plan and function inside the house, we were removing the windows that you see. This is the north side of the home. The next picture shows what it would look like without those windows. Similarly, the next one, I believe, shows the removing those double hung on the south elevation. And I don't know if you want me to explain why, or I guess we can wait till the end, but in case this comes up. So this, again, that porch that I was mentioning, their side porch, as we stood on their porch and looked in, and we said to the architect, show us where those windows would be. And he took a tape, he said right about there, which was literally eye level to the porch right beside the house. So we thought, walking up and down your stairs, that's where those would have been, just for privacy. That was feeling a little exposed, so to speak. So the next picture just shows you what that looks like without, and then he suggested put that longer window up on the top, just so there is some light on that side of the house, but high enough that nobody's staring in or we're looking at one another. This is the garage, and we never wanted any windows at grade, just again for privacy and security. Our house right now, we have no windows at grade, and I like it because nobody can break in there and push somebody through to open the door. So we didn't want that to begin with. This copy didn't come out very well, but I have copies if anybody would like them. But this is simply the exact design without the window. Similar on the other side, we had 2 there and decided to remove those. And that's what it would look like. These are the initial drawings. You can see what I meant by that front porch a little bit better there, and that 3rd gable looks a little funky. And again, the next photo just shows what the house would look like. And that, I think, also in the packet was the site plan, and the topography. What do you call that document? Thank you. Plat of survey for both the garage and the home. We did bring a sample of that interior, because I don't know that it was indicated what the interior of the porch would look like. And it's actually it's kind of a neat, it looks like wood. It's not wood. It's kind of
It's just aluminum.
just aluminum.
It's just a lot on commercial architectural grade properties, but we've seen them a lot, actually. A few in Evanston, one on Asbury has it, and some other homes. So it was just for aesthetics and to give the house a little bit of a it's contemporary farmhouse style, so a little architectural design. So this is the product, actually.
Do you want to touch it? Anybody want to see it? No?
It's just aluminum.
And I think that's it, unless I can answer any questions right now.
Yeah, I have some questions. Can you tell me in that image, what's the material in the gable end?
That's all hardy board. So it's literally hardy board, just the other direction. We brought a sample.
And so it's very wide versus the horizontal siding, the clapboard siding below, and it's drawn as if there's a vertical batten.
Yeah, the bands are hardy board, just cut a different size, so we didn't want it to look like just a flat. We wanted a little bit of dimension in there. So we put the vertical on top. We're actually mimicking the house. What's the name of that street just east? Is that, yeah, in Michigan, there's one. So we were kind of mimicking the neighborhood a little bit.
Can you tell
All of the
me?
gables are board and batten.
Okay.
As well as the garage and ADU, all are board and batten.
Okay. And can you tell me why you've gone to casement windows almost everywhere, but not quite everywhere, instead of the double hungs that were shown in the original scheme?
Just for function. You know, we wanted to be able to crack all windows a little bit just to get some nice fresh air throughout. It's really just function. We understand it's a little bit more efficient.
Okay. And in your rendering, it shows those casement windows as divided light, and in your elevations, it does not. What's your intention?
I'm sorry, divided.
Divided lights. In other words, there are muttons, crossbars in the windows?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, there should be dividers.
There should be.
There will be dividers.
Yes.
Okay.
And all of them are casements, none are double hung.
Okay. Well, the garage is still showing double hungs, and I thought there were some. Doesn't matter. So you're changing everything that's shown in the old drawings to casements.
Correct.
Okay.
Do you happen to know the pattern of the divided lights?
Elevate.
Or
Windows?
how many divisions, I guess, is what I'm asking.
There's just one cross.
So it's a square over a square? Like one hole and
We
then?
have a picture we can show you.
Oh, that's not noticed, okay. It's 2 over 2.
It's a 2 over 2?
So it's just 4 lights total.
Okay. So they're talking about 2 over 2.
Rendering showed like 4 over 4, but it's a 2 over 2.
Exhibit 1 is going to.
Yeah, that's helpful.
Just before I forget, maybe she needs also to sign up, please.
Sure.
Which ones in particular? Anything that's going to be very tiny, like if it's in one of the bathrooms? I'm sorry, I apologize. Anything that's going to be like in a bathroom probably should not have those dividers. It's just going to be the much larger scale windows. that
Okay. And
we
what about the
expect.
horizontal windows? How are you treating those?
The single pane, large horizontal at the top of the stairs will be solid glass with no dividers at all.
Okay. And then what about
So-
the ones for the basement level?
I'm sorry, I believe that they're a crank window, and I don't recall that they have a divider.
Okay.
But I cannot tell you with 100% certainty.
Okay. And are they clad windows, painted windows? Are the divisions adhered to the glass? Are they real divisions in the glass? Are they snap-ins that are on the inside?
They are not in the interior, they're not within inside the panes. We have been between two companies, both Marvin, the windows will be all wood, aluminum clad exterior. There have been, the lead times, as you can imagine, for all of these products has been just horrendous. So we originally selected Marvin windows. Then we were told that the lead time was relatively reasonable, maybe 8 to 10 weeks. And then Marvin jumped up to about 16 weeks. So we went and we received an estimate from Pella for a very similar product, slightly larger glass windows, because theirs were only at 8 weeks. And in the interim, with everything that's been happening, the Pella are now at 12 weeks, and now the Marvins, we had every window in the house, the cutouts, all resized for Marvin, and now Marvin is at 20 weeks minimum. So we have not selected, obviously, until we received approval, which window company we plan to go with. But they will be all wood, and we'd like to go with casement, but we're trying to get the ones that are going to be the quickest.
Will they be, both Marvin and Pella make a variety of products?
Yes.
That simulate old putty glazed, divided, single glazed windows? Will they be what's now referred to as a simulated divided light window? Is that your intention?
Both the Pella and the Marvin are the exact product. It just depends on.
I know, but
I don't
what I'm
know what-
saying is they make a few products that vary in cost. Some of them have divisions which are actually adhered to both the inside and the outside of the thermopane. Some of them simply have divisions which are fit to the frame on the inside of the window, which forget Pella versus Marvin, because they make the same things, essentially. Which product are you proposing for this house?
They were on the inside, weren't they? It's been, we've gone
Well,
round and round.
one's referred to as a snap-in, and the other one is referred to as a simulated divided light. And they actually look very different. That's why we're asking.
Okay. Well, let's see here. This says divided light cut.
Alignment.
This is on the Marvin Elevate. It says divided light cut.
Does that answer the question?
No.
No.
Stainless perimeter
think
spacer
they-
bar.
Cut is just the drawings showing the divisions.
They will have the divisions, and
But
I
they're not
recall
they're not
talking
inside.
to the Marvin guy about the.
Yeah, I'm sorry, because I don't know the terminology for everything. I mean, I can show you, our
Yeah.
partial estimates for both products.
Yeah. Did you ask your architect to
But it will
come in
look-
and help out with the presentation and answering questions like this?
Well, and I think if it comes down to things like this, Stuart, we could also probably require these things and have Kate and Carlos
Okay.
work with them to make sure that they're simulated divided light. It sounds like they're wood aluminum clad, which I
Yeah.
believe is acceptable to everyone. So as far as the profiles or the simulated divided lights, I'm sure that can be something that Kate and Carlos can check.
Well, did you say that it said spacer bar in what you were just reading?
Yeah, that's what.
I think she did, John.
Yeah.
I think when I
That's
met
an
with you,
SDL then.
when I met with you and your contractor, he seemed to indicate that it was an SDL, so it would have the spacer bar in between the thermopane, and then it would have an interior and exterior applied mutton.
Right, that's what I thought.
So
Yeah.
the question I have though is that you're looking at Marvin Elevate. Does anyone remember? I think Elevate is the fiberglass version of the Marvin product, not the wood and clad version.
I think that is true, and I think that is a discussion we need to have. It is a new home. We have approved fiberglass, I believe, on new construction in the past. So that's another discussion item. If we find that acceptable, an alternate material, or if it needs to be the wood aluminum clad. I think since we have, all the windows would be the same construction and it is a new construction, we have done that in the past, so.
I don't object, especially if there's
Yeah,
a precedent for new construction.
You know, I apologize, I'm not trying to be difficult. The reason I asked you about your architect is every single one of these drawings doesn't agree with the other drawings. I'm looking at the rendering, and the rendering shows divided lights, which are very different from what you've shown me. It also shows the hardy board siding in the gable ends being the same scale as the clapboard on the sides. So, I mean, I can only speak for myself, but I don't know, I couldn't approve this because I don't know what I'm approving.
Well, my understanding was the questions were the door, the elevation, the gable, and the window placement and function. And that's what we're trying to address.
I mean, the rendering also doesn't, it shows a solid door, but it shows a solid door that goes all the way up to the underside of the porch roof.
Right.
But I can't tell from the drawings whether you're going back to the version that has the transom above it, or whether it's simply a much taller door. So maybe.
I wouldn't use the rendering as the basis for making your decisions, just because that's something that I requested from the contractor, and I think based on the timing that they needed to turn around the submission, he put something together that's more reflective of I think the massing than it is the actual the cladding and the components.
I mean, I guess the reason that I'm asking is I'm looking at the before and after, and actually think that, and again, this doesn't bear on anything, but in my opinion, the slightly wider front door with the transom actually, I think, looks a little bit better, but, you know.
That photo, that rendering is really indicative of what we're building. We'd like to.
And just as a point of clarification for the commissioners, you don't have to just review what the changes are necessarily. The way that the rules are structured, you're allowed to apply the standards generally for all these aspects. So if you feel like the proportion of the front opening of the door does not relate to the opening size of the the rest of the house and the windows, then that is something that would be under your purview.
I agree with Stuart on the front door. It looks a little lonely on that big field of wall there without the transom. Also, the hardy board and batten and the gable ends also seems a little sparse. I don't know what's subject to our discussion tonight, although you just indicated that anything is game, any change that we see anyway, and those are two big changes that we're looking at. It's hard to assess the windows without seeing all the muttons in place and the different proportions to make sure that they're consistent and what we like to see. Do we think that this is something that we want to do a continuance on? Just get just more information.
Before we discuss that, do we have any other questions for the applicant so that? Why don't you take a seat just so that you don't have to? Okay, so going back to John's comment, I mean, I personally feel that this could be handled with a subcommittee and administratively, if it's something that just needs to be resolved with what mutton grids are being put in, and whether they're being put in the basement windows or whether they're being put in the bathroom, which windows are those. I think that is almost as simple as just drawing those in and making sure they're accurately shown. And then as far as the window types, and whether it's an SDL or whether it's fiberglass or wood, again, I think that could be handled administratively. Now, as far as the comments towards the gable ends, why don't we discuss that now and find out how everybody feels about those types of situations with the door and the gable ends, so that we can maybe come to some sort of resolution.
I mean, in the gable end, there are at least 3 different versions when you look through here. So I mean, it's not a huge issue, but it would be nice to know what we're approving.
So I think we need more clarification on the rhythm and spacing of the actual material and what the material profile is. Is that what I'm hearing?
Sure.
Do we have comments to whether it's vertical or horizontal, or is it just merely this rhythm?
I think the verticality is fine with me.
It's fine with me, too. I think it's a scale. The
Okay.
thing looks top-heavy.
So it's the
You
rhythm.
know,
It's
I
the
mean,
rhythm.
you grade things from top to bottom
Mhm.
because of gravity, and it's an expectation that comes with the physics of the world translated into visual terms.
Okay, and then the other item is, I'm hearing, is the front door, correct? That the proportions of the front door almost were preferred of the original option?
If I can just say one thing, John, because you had mentioned that. So when we removed the transom, we decided to go with a larger door. So the door is actually quite large. It's not a standard size door. So it really encompasses where the transom was. We just didn't want people to be able to look in from the street into the glass of the transom, to be able to see up, because it will lead right to where our stairs go
not
to
showing
the
that,
second floor. So it's a very large, oversized door.
That's good to hear.
Not
So
just a-
is it the drawing where they just clipped the transom off, but they didn't actually rescale it to the bigger door that you're going with? Okay.
Yes.
So the door is taller, but it's not
fills-
as wide as the original proposed.
It doesn't
It's
look-
narrower,
I
but
don't-
taller.
do you have the dimensions? If I heard
I
the
mean-
dimensions, I might
Okay.
recognize them. It's
No, it's-
quite big.
So I think, just to echo what Stuart is saying, it is a little bit difficult for us to make sure that we know what you're proposing when the elevation is showing one thing and then the rendering's showing one thing. And then, now we're hearing that the door is taller. So I think what I'd like to ask my fellow commissioners is that, do we think that this needs to come back with revised drawings? Or do we think this can be handled with a subcommittee and administrative review?
The latter is fine for me.
Agreed?
I think I mean, obviously, there's a lot of time delays that, to order the windows, and I don't think we should hold the applicants up.
Okay. Stuart? Do you want to be on the subcommittee?
Sure.
I mean, you don't.
Well, no, I mean, we're building stuff, we're seeing the same thing with windows. It's maddening. We just had a job where they changed from Pella windows to Marvin windows because Marvin would supply them earlier, and now I'm hearing from the Pella rep that if you want casements, you can get them faster than you can get double hungs because the molded jam liners are not getting to their factory so that they can deliver them. So I'm in sympathy with what Mark said, but I also, I need to see and understand what I'm being asked to approve. And the drawings have so many contradictions in them that I don't know how to vote for or against or on the drawings.
Does anyone have an issue with them going from the hung windows to the casements? No? Okay.
I thought the double hungs were more in keeping with the style of the house, but I understand the desire to have the entire area of the window open. So it really is a matter of having the windows drawn with the divisions in them, looking at it in relation to the whole overall design, and then saying, yeah, that's going to be fine, or no, there's a scale problem here, or whatever.
Okay, so what I'm hearing the items are is that we need to know what the muntin patterns are for each window, which windows have divisions and which windows don't, and that should be reflected on your elevations with your new windows. We need to know more about the width and spacing and the profile of your gable end material and how that keeps in rhythm and spacing and proportions with the rest of the home. And then we need to know what the door opening is and reflect that on the elevation so that we can see how that opening size relates to the rest of the facade. Are there any other items that commissioners would like to see addressed?
I just noticed when I keep trying to figure out, what we're looking at, and I noticed that the roof of it goes from it's from sheet metal to standing seam. So I'm just trying to understand that too. The roof material of the front porch, is it standing seam or is it just like sheet metal?
They're all standing seam.
Okay, so it's standing seam, okay.
Okay, so the roof is consistent in material is what we're hearing. Okay.
I do have one other aesthetic issue that I do want to have a discussion about, and that is the one very horizontal window on the side elevation, which sometimes you see in homes in this neighborhood of a different era over a stairway or with some wood paneling, some other friends around it. That one looks, I guess I need to know a little bit of the history of that window and how it ended up in that shape, and I want to hear from my fellow commissioners if they think that maybe that could be proportioned a little bit better.
I feel that it's a side elevation and it's high enough up and enough out of the view that I'm not against it. I understand your concerns, but it's not something, I think I would be more particular about the front elevation than that, but that doesn't mean that it doesn't warrant discussion.
Well, the cumulative total of all the things that we've talked about on this, I still don't object to approving this subject to a very heavy administrative / commissioner review that would not require them to come back.
Okay,
I was just
Go ahead,
going to add that I am fine with the reduction in the gables. That was one of the original things that the property owners were asking about, and I'm not sure that we've discussed it. But the going from 3 to 2 is fine. I think it looks better, actually, simplified. So I thought I'd just throw that out in case we wanted to talk about it.
Not only is simplifying it better, but if the rendering that came with that first scheme is correct, you would trap snow and have ice damming and all sorts of problems up there unless you put a big diagonal angled plane in there called, oddly enough, and I don't know the history of the term, but it's called a cricket. So you need some way to get the water out of the intersection between those two roofs, otherwise you will have a disaster, and the simplification of the roof solves that problem for you. So I assume we didn't discuss it because everybody thought it was a good idea.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is that we'd like to make a motion for the certificate of appropriateness with the idea that there would be an administrative review with a subcommittee of commissioners, and that the administrative review would have a revised submission that includes the window divisions, the gable end material, clarifications for the gable end material, and then the front door proportions. Is that? Go ahead, Beth.
I'm sorry to say, one more thing I'm just noticing a difference is the stair railing at the front. Some of the elevations show the horizontal original scheme, and then now I'm seeing the vertical. So I'm just not sure with this front railing. What's the current front railing supposed to be like?
It's vertical.
It's supposed to be horizontal. Okay. Okay.
Is that
got it.
consistent with the previous application?
Yes. Okay, so some of these drawings show vertical, is what I'm saying. Am I looking at the right thing?
The elevation with the transom Is that what you're talking about?
Let me
Has
get
it
to
as
that one.
vertical? It's their sheet 3, I think.
There she.
East elevation.
Thank you, okay.
On these horizontals.
Okay. So it's going to be horizontal. That's the intention. But unfortunately, the drawings just aren't. Yeah, I know.
So it's just the front railing is what you're asking, Beth? The front railings?
Yes, the front railings, please. Just to
Confirm?
double clarify that all the drawings are showing horizontal railings.
Okay.
I remember that from your original submission. It was nice. Yeah.
Is there a commissioner that is willing to make this motion if I read off this list one more time? Mark. So we would need to make a motion with administrative review and a subcommittee of commissioners for clarification on the window divisions, gable end material, front door proportions, and the front railing.
And that gable material also translates to the coach house.
Yes, so we could say the main house and the coach house.
I think it's all the walls on the coach
The garage
house.
is all of, I assume the garage is the same material as the gable ends.
Everything.
Okay.
Clarify the gable ends, please.
So it's that area right there that Kate is circling. We just want to know what the profile of that is and what the width of those boards are. Yeah. Yeah. Someone willing to make that motion?
Not quite. I'm wondering if we want to make a recommendation to increase or rather decrease the spacing on the batten strips, on the gables at least. I'm not convinced the garage needs it, but on the gable end. Stuart, do you think that would be appropriate, that if we're going to have a administrative review on this, that while they redo their drawings to clarify some things, that we actually ask for the spacing on the batten strips to be reduced a little bit? Okay.
So I think the idea is that when we would like to see that width narrowed for the vertical members at the gable end.
At the top only.
Correct. And it would be on the coach, well, the coach house you said you found to be
It's
not
kind
as.
of its own thing, and it's
and
not
it's in the
related
back
to the
of it.
siding underneath, so
I
I'm not
think we'd
convinced.
just like to see the rhythm of the top to be similar to, not necessarily matching the width, but I'm saying is that it to be, I feel like I'm hearing my fellow commissioners say that it's almost too wide, that it is just drawing your eye up there and creating a different proportion at the top.
So you're finding the width for the board and batten and the vertical in the gables the width to be too far.
Correct.
In relation to the dimensions of the horizontal hardy board below.
I think they would just like to see them narrower at the top.
Yeah. The drawings I have does not have anything showing the back of the house, nor does it have anything showing what the sides of the garage look like. The short sides, or actually the garages are almost square, so it's the sides that would have a gable end based on the way the roof is shown. So it would be nice to know whether you're carrying out the same motif of the house, which is to change from a horizontal board to a vertical board on the garage as well. So maybe stuff like that could be added to the presentation and for the review, and maybe the drawings could be looked at to make sure that they're all consistent, that is, that they're all showing the same thing, and that would be great, and it would make everybody's job easy.
Just so you know, the garage is vertical from the top all the way down. There are no.
Oh, on the sides.
There are no horizontal bands now on the garage.
Just for some clarification. I
The
think
drawings show horizontal siding.
I think on page 102, it shows all
Oh,
four
what have I
elevations
got?
of the garage.
Yeah, this is their
Oh, this is, that's what I got sent. Oh, okay.
Okay. Hopefully this is,
Well, Do we want?
Oh, go ahead, Carlos.
Boards, if that's board and.
Oh, Carl, go ahead. Do you have something to say?
Oh, I was just trying to say that page 102 has all 4 elevations of the garage, so if Stuart.
I think Kate is showing Stuart that right now. Good. Okay, so I think the list now, if I'm correct, is clarification on the window divisions, the gable end material and spacing, the front door proportions, and the front railing. And this would be reviewed administratively with the assistance of a subcommittee of commissioners that I will just allow the staff to determine who that will be. Is somebody willing to have those 4 items added as recommendations to be reviewed administratively?
If we're having trouble remember it, someone could just say so moved or something similar.
I can take a stab at it. Okay. Regarding 548 Judson Avenue, Lakeshore Historic District, case 19, Pres 0262, I move that we approve substantial modifications to a previously approved certificate of appropriateness, again, 19 Pres-0262, for construction of a new 2-story single-family residence and detached 2-story coach house and garage. Alterations primarily include changes to the structure's roof form, pattern of fenestration, including window location, sizes, and operating style, exterior cladding, and front porch dimension and detailing. This approval of the modifications is subject to staff, administrative, and a small subpanel of commissioner review of the window mutton patterns, as well as the window manufacturer and type, the gable end batten strip spacing, which we've requested be a little bit tighter than it is right now, more accurate depiction of the larger front door, and the consistent depiction of the railing system. Applicable standards, construction 1 through 8 and 10 through 16.
Second?
Second.
Carl seconds. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries 7-0. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, John.
Can I have everybody who spoke signed on the sheet, please? Everybody who spoke, you and her.
Okay, meeting minutes, Cade.
Why don't we take these one at a time since there's 2 of them? Did anyone have comments or revisions for the minutes of March 15th?
I did not. No? Do you want to make a motion for each? So if we can make a motion to approve the meeting minutes for March 15th, please?
I move to approve the meeting minutes from March 15th, 2022.
Is there a second? Second. Stuart seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed or abstention?
Abstain, I wasn't there.
So we have,
I am trying to remember if I was there or not. One of them
I
that
think
we
you were
are-
there in March and you were absent in April.
Okay, then I approve.
okay, so 6 ayes and 1 abstention. Okay.
Any comments or revisions on the minutes of April 12th?
Is there a motion to approve those for April 12th?
I I move we approve the minutes for April 12th.
Thank you, Mark. Second?
Second.
Beth seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, and Sarah, you're going to abstain?
Abstain, yeah.
Okay, so 6 ayes and 1 abstention. Okay, staff reports?
Long-range work plan, finalizing some of the comments we received last time, and then I'm going to send an implementation section and then convene another meeting is the intent, and then we can bring that back next month or the month after for kind of a final draft. But I think we're making pretty consistent, good progress on it. And then, Carlos, do you just want to give a brief summary of some of the Preservation Month activities? The month of May is Historic Preservation Month, and we do have a number of partner organizations in the city that are doing things to commemorate that.
Thank you. So the Evanston History Center had activities with the house walk on May 1st, and on Thursday the 12th they're going to have a speech by a historian about the airline. So we're going to post the event in our electronic mailing, so people can attend. And the Wheeler History Center, the WCTU, is open for tours on 2 dates, on Thursday and Sundays. At the end of the month, they have 3 tours per day. And the markers for the recognition of Evanston Black citizens that the commission worked with Dino Robinson. We installed 2 of the markers on the first 2 properties on Darrow Avenue on the 2100 block and the 2000 block. Dino expects to have a ceremony this coming Saturday, which you will receive information at the time, an unveiling of the markers. We have collaboration also from the street department, where we actually went out there and drilled a sidewalk and installed the markers. People came out and asked what were we doing. We explained, and people were very happy to hear that. So it was very nice to experience the comments from the residents in the area. There are 6 more markers that will be placed in the city of Evanston, particularly in the downtown. So Dino and I will go and check the condition of the sidewalks, because the downtown, they have some of the brick pavers, so we had to have a different method how to install these markers. But I think that, there is a website, an application where once you go in front of the house, you see the number, and there will be an app. You can go to the app and see what's the relevance of that particular site. So I will also share that with you tomorrow, the address for that application. Dino has been extraordinary doing this project, almost single-handedly, but he definitely is very grateful that the commission had its support, and then, we passed the resolution for that project, and I think that's one of the nicest projects I've been involved in a long time, with some residents actually are really happy to participate and are very proud of their accomplishments. So, and I want to thank the commission for being part of it. So, thank you.
Okay, Kay, do you want to talk about the downtown heritage?
Yeah, I'd like to spend a little time discussing the downtown. As many of you probably know, downtowns all across the country, ours included, it's facing really significant uncertainty. That's related really to high ground floor vacancy, as well as changes in retail and office market structures as a result of the pandemic. I think it's something like north of half of the daytime population that used to be in downtown Evanston is no longer there because of the office vacancy. And there's also, at the same time, continued development pressure in the downtown, consistent even during the pandemic. So I'd like to spend some time discussing the potential for an intensive survey of the downtown area. Survey and documentation efforts, they're really the foundation of preservation planning. They allowed the commission to collect data on what resources exist, including architectural, cultural, historical, as well as more broadly kind of character defining or contributing structures within the downtown. And it allows us to create more proactive recommendations and decisions for their retention as well as their celebration. I think a lot of the decisions in the downtown in the last decade have been really reactive instead of proactive. Some of that has to do with the timing of the last downtown plan that was passed by the city, which unfortunately coincided with a massive recession in 2008. And again, really substantial changes in land use and market conditions that really never rebounded to the full extent. So I think, one, we should discuss if it seems like a survey of the downtown is warranted, if that's something that the commission would like to spend time on and how they'd like to see that structured. This effort, it kind of supplements efforts that first started by the very first Evanston Preservation Commission in the 1970s, when they were actually asked to somewhat disregard downtown when they were moving forward with a lot of their designations, partially because of the level of redevelopment that happened in the downtown. They were given advice at the time from the National Park Service that a cohesive district wasn't feasible because of surface parking lots that were interspaced, as well as many new structures as part of redevelopment that were less than 50 years old at the time. I think that could certainly be revisited, and it was in 2007 by the Preservation Commission, kind of as a concurrent effort to the downtown plan at the time. The Preservation Commission in 2007 did somewhat of a reconnaissance level survey in the downtown. They identified somewhere around 20 properties that they felt were eligible for landmark designation, but they didn't really explore if there were contributing resources that may not be eligible but could be documented and celebrated in some way. They didn't explore cultural resources or significant histories or stories in the downtown. I think including the redevelopment of downtown and that history, it's starting to be something that's more at the forefront of preservation planning. Some of those redevelopment activities that happened in the 50s, 60s, and 70s have some significance in their own right now. That's a significant part of our collective history as a country, the redevelopment that happened, for better or worse. And I think that the last thing I want to say is that this effort has the potential to support and kind of run concurrently with a separate but related effort by the Economic Development Division, who put out an RFP and selected a consultant to study ways to increase business retention and vibrancy, not just in the downtown, but in all of Evanston's business districts. So I think if we're able to work with them and supplement what they're doing by looking at adaptive use potential, significant resources that exist, significant aspects of, there's some really beautiful storefronts that still exist in the downtown that should be retained. There's significant detailing, character-defining features of buildings that, if they come in for redevelopment of a storefront or upper stories, they should look at retaining those features or have the information to properly maintain them. There's some cast iron storefronts in the downtown. There's a lot of terracotta work. So there is a lot of significance that I think, I don't want to say it was overlooked, but I don't think it was the charge of the commission in 2007 at the time to kind of look at. And then partially in 2019 and early 2020, the then planning manager at the time, we identified about 25 or so additional resources that we listed as warranting additional research and background research and field assessment, which could be part of this effort as well. And that was included in the map that I provided. It kind of shows the existing, there's 28 existing landmarks, and there's 20 in 2007 that they said were eligible, and then there's an additional 20 plus that they thought there could be additional background research on.
So I think this is actually a really good effort that works kind of in tandem with a lot of what is happening right now in Evanston and the commission. I would really like to try to focus on, and Kate, remind me what you call them, character, what are you, how are you surveying?
And so the downtown, it's part of the history of the downtown that even exists prior to the 2008-2009 downtown plan. When they first looked at redevelopment in the downtown, they identified 3 areas that they called traditional character zones. It's basically the east and west portions of Davis Street, as well as a section of Sherman Avenue. And these areas were somewhat spared from redevelopment because of that classification, and then that was brought up again in the downtown planning process and transitioned into a separate zoning district, which is the D2 zoning, which is a traditional downtown zoning district. So I think that within those, at least those 3 areas, but there's probably many, many more, you can create what I called character area profiles. It looks at the significant architectural and built resources, as well as the different histories, cultural significance, and stories within those areas. Because they are very different, even though they're part of the downtown, they do have a very different feel from each other.
Yeah, and I think these character profiles, if we could kind of expand on this and do this survey together as a commission, we could try to help find ways to incentivize the protection of these buildings without forcing them into a landmark. Like, they're not in that area, and a lot of developers, as we all know, won't choose to do that just out of the so I think if we can find ways to work with the economic development committee and work with that director and work with that department in Evanston and find these ways to characterize them, I think it might help us protect some of those more vulnerable buildings in downtown. So I think what would be the next steps, Kate, for?
I think we should probably discuss, and I'd be happy to bring something back at the next meeting, but discuss how this would be structured, because it is this would be a big lift. It's not something the commission could do on its own. You would need to enlist the help of volunteers. That happened in 2015 when we did the survey of landmark properties outside of districts. There was a significant contingent of volunteers who did a lot of background research into pulled permits throughout the life of a lot of these buildings, as well as now I think it would be important to look at both kind of the cultural histories as well as some of the redevelopment histories to tell the story of what existed previously, what exists there now. There's significant individuals that have contributed to our downtown that their stories should also be told.
Is there a way to prioritize some of the lists that's already been made and we start to target certain buildings that we focus on these efforts on and get, hopefully then if we can get more traction and get more involvement, it will help then work through the rest of the list. But there are things there are buildings that we feel that should be, that be more prioritized. Maybe we can develop that and then that can be brought to the next meeting or it can be circulated, so that the commissioners can discuss how we want to go about that.
Even a nice start, as you say, would be almost to start with a reconnaissance level survey of the downtown and try to identify areas that have a different spirit, a different character. You could try to map those areas and then within them try to identify buildings that not only appear like they have architectural significance, but I think some of this effort is also to look at kind of character defining buildings that also facilitate business retention and small business retention, which is typically older buildings that have a lower rent structure as well as a smaller storefront footprint for small business.
Sorry, go ahead. I mean, would anyone be opposed if, these aren't very big areas, these character zones, would anyone be opposed if we could break out into groups of 2 and try to set up a way to do a preliminary survey of certain zones, and then we could discuss as a commission, and maybe Kay can put together some of the points that we should be looking at, and maybe just get a better feel of what we're working with as far as what this would entail.
Could we also possibly include that document that included the eligible buildings, because some of them are outside of those delineated character areas. Like I'm thinking of the building at the corner of Church and Davis, or Church and Benson. It's like the last row of historic buildings with Sherman Plaza taking up the rest of the block. Like, you know, it's across the street from a string of landmarks. And so it's just like, you know, like the character areas end that list of.
I mean, maybe
So-
we could divide out into like different tasks, and then just people can sign up for different teams to do different areas. Sorry, go ahead, Sarah.
Yeah, so a couple of questions. Just as a clarification, Kate, are you asking us if we're going to do it, or are we going to hire somebody to do it?
That's something that I think is something that we should discuss, because there is the potential with our CLG status that we could move forward and try to get CLG grant funding for a consultant to help. It wouldn't be necessarily that the consultant would do all of it, but he would, they would do it in conjunction with the commission's help and also with volunteers.
Right, because a reconnaissance level survey, even at this, it's a lot of work. I've done that work.
I think we just need to maybe get an
It's a lot.
overall arching idea of what we want to
Right.
achieve, right? This is a lot of parts, and as a commission, we're only going to achieve one part of it.
So that's my next question is, Kate, are you asking us if we want to survey just the character zones, to sort of accept the zones, that have already been created for us? Or are we going to go and sort of reassess the whole area?
I think that they're a nice starting place. I don't think that they are perfect. I think there are many examples where they could be expanded. I think there might be areas where others exist. So I think they're a nice starting place, but I don't think we should be bound by those boundaries.
I mean, because once you're out in the field doing the reconnaissance level survey, it's not, I mean, if you have volunteers and what they're doing is straightforward, if you're using iPads or whatever to do that surveying, it might be a fairly straightforward thing if it's organized enough just to do the whole area. I mean, do we have iPads and software and all that we could set up for them?
I do not. So typically, when I've done this in the past as a consultant, we would contract with someone who had a very specific software that you would use. They were part of the team, and they would let you utilize that software. I do not know if we have the ability to create something on our own that might work for our own purposes, or if you would need to hire somebody for that.
Yeah, I mean, I used to just create worksheets and like actual pen and paper back in the day, and then just show the volunteers how to do it. And then it all gets collated later and added to the GIS. But in any case,
Can I just add something? I think
Yeah.
the National Alliance of Preservation Commissions actually has a survey app that I think you can use that assists commissions to do survey work.
Mhm.
And I don't know if you have to pay for it or if it's like a open source kind of thing, but that could be a resource that you could use.
I just don't want, I also don't want it to get so large that it becomes overwhelming and we don't do any of it, because, so not that I don't want to discount the whole downtown area, and I completely agree, Sarah, once you get going, you can, but I think I would like to see some momentum to get going first, and I think on the front end, we maybe just need to get familiar with these zones so that we as a commission can develop a plan that then Kate and Carlos can help us put into motion, hopefully talk to the economic development director, see if we can work with their consultant and get some more, help. But I think for now, we just need to figure out what do we even want to achieve with the effort. And I think that these character zones are small enough that if we break off and do a little bit of some education of these areas and what do we want to see out of these areas, and which buildings maybe do we want to try to really preserve with maybe potentially incentives. I think that would be a good thing to bring back, that information bring back to the staff. Not that we have to do this tomorrow, but Cade, we can maybe just keep working on.
I think a good initial step based on the conversation, it would help us maybe guide a follow-up conversation, would be to have groups of 3 or 4 commissioners that do walking tours with staff, and we walk around and familiarize ourselves with some of these areas, and then we can come back and discuss them and discuss a path to move forward. If the scope becomes too large, then I think, you would have to probably look at hiring somebody and getting grant funding for that. But if the scope was relatively small and we could agree to that, I think it's probably something that staff could do with the help of the commission and other volunteers.
And one item, just to pull this out from your write-up, Kate, is that I think that telling more of the story and making sure that this time around then we are including more of the significance that might not just be architectural. And so making sure that it jives with the long-range planning that we're talking about, and, you had mentioned it in here too. So I think it's good to go ahead and have those 3 areas as a starting point, but then I do feel like there's a layer of, one of the next steps would be that research to discover the story, if there is one to be had, whether or not there's integrity existing or not, or just how we're defining significance as we go through this, making sure that
Because
the
I know,
stories.
Mark, you and Aleka did a lot of that in Ward 5, right? When you went through, you guys were focusing a lot on cultural significance, right? As opposed to architectural significance?
Actually, a lot of DDoS sites were scattered, all over the city, including several downtown. But I don't know that there's much relationship between the historical or cultural events and the physical structures that are there now.
Right, so the reconnaissance level is going to just identify architectural significance potentially. Just so that we.
I think we start with that, and
Yeah, I know, it's
I
not
think
necessarily
we try to make it as defined as we can starting off, so that we don't just all get overwhelmed and it becomes. So I think, if I'm hearing right with Cade, it might be good before the next meeting, that we have some conversations, if we can schedule some walking tours with staff for, 3 commissioners, if you want to pick a zone, and maybe we can have some dates that we can sign up, and maybe some commissioners can pick to go to that zone with staff and walk it with staff, and we just have some conversations about what we see in those zones and what we want to do with the survey. I think that would be a great first step, to just trying to educate ourselves with what we're dealing with. And then we can always take it bigger. I think we prefer to start with something that's actually realistic. So we can work on that, and then we can circle back around with everyone. Okay? Any other discussion items, or no? I'm going to ask for Carl if he wants to make a motion to adjourn.
Okay, I make a motion to adjourn.
Sarah, second.
Second.
Sarah, seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.